legendary is the word that best describes our next guest here at Oris Sanctuary. Join us as he takes us into the seventh heaven of the cigar kingdom, touching on the power of humidity and the temperature from the tobacco seed to smoke, and the life and death of the process which could make or break a cigar brand and or a dynasty. It's considered by many as one of the most serial master blenders of our time in the cigar world. A man who leaves no stones unturned during his process of blending, all in the name of that hand-rolled premium cigar. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Oris Sanctuary, Nick Melillo of Foundation Cigars.
Good evening, Nick.
Great to see you. Honored to be here.
You
So
too.
happy to be talking with you finally. We have a lot to talk about.
Finally. How interesting. So we're starting off this conversation with one of your finest cigars. This the Tabernacle
Yes, sir.
Havana.
Havana seed. It's grown in the wrapper is grown. It's Havana seed that's grown in the Connecticut River Valley, where I actually have our corporate office for Foundation, is right in the heart of the Connecticut River Valley, which is, I call it it's the main growing region really in the United States, a long history. But this Cuban seed was brought to Connecticut in the 1870s and is grown in Connecticut, and then it goes through fermentation for 3 years in Nicaragua. So it's a special blend, yeah. For Tabernacle.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You said it goes into fermentation for 3 years.
Correct. In my opinion,
yeah.
It's not you don't see many companies that use the Cuban seed that's grown in the Connecticut River Valley. Typically, you'll hear of Connecticut broadleaf. The Cuban seed is, in my opinion, everybody has their own opinions, is one of the more difficult leaves to ferment because it takes so long and it has so much oil and body, but the leaf is thinner. So you have to there's this window when it's ready, and it has to be cured. I mean, this is talked about a lot, slow and steady, but this is really the case with this leaf. It takes about 3 years to go through the full fermentation process. So we ship it from Connecticut in refrigerated containers, usually 40-foot containers. It arrives in Nicaragua. It actually just came last month. We got this past year's crop. So I've been down here looking through these crops. It gets pre-sorted based on texture, and then it goes into fermentation, yes, for almost 3 years, sometimes a little bit less, but that's before it actually goes on to a cigar.
So is this the original of the 4 sizes, allegedly, that you created?
This is, I first created the Tabernacle Connecticut broadleaf. So that's
Okay.
the other band. It's the darker band, which
Yes.
has the coronation picture of Haile Selassie, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So that's the Connecticut broadleaf. Yes, this is the Havana seed image, and that image of Haile Selassie actually comes when he was made Prince Regent of Ethiopia. So it was before his crowning. That image is one of my favorite images also of Haile Selassie. So they're two similar blends in the filler and the binder, but the wrappers are very different. So this one is the Cuban seed. The other one is Connecticut broadleaf seed, which are completely different seed varieties.
Okay. So this is one of your, this is one of your first 2 broadleaf wrapped cigars, correct?
This is for Foundation. Yeah, we released the first Tabernacle broadleaf in 2016, and
Correct.
then the one you're smoking was released in 2018.
2018.
2018. Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of our most sought after brands because it is the inventories of Connecticut broadleaf and the Cuban seed. We've been having a challenging time with the weather in the Connecticut River Valley. It has not been cooperating really well over the past 5 years. So the amount of wrapper leaf that the crops have been yielding have been very, very small. So that limits us to the amount of production we're able to make. And the brand has been growing, but the inventory of leaf has been very small. So it's one of our most sought after sticks in our portfolio.
This is my first time smoking this, and I'm
Yes.
able to. I'm getting. Correct me here.
Yes.
Sweet cedar, milk and
Yes.
chocolate,
Mhm.
milk and
Very
chocolate,
good.
milk and
It's a
chocolate.
very it's a very unusual. I think it's very unusual because the leaf
Mm,
is very unique.
mm,
The wrapper leaf. The binder on the cigar is San Andreas Negro from Mexico,
hmm.
and then the fillers are from Esteli,
Yes.
Jalapa in the north of Nicaragua, and there's also a little from Jamastran, Honduras, which is interesting. The chocolate because you just pass over the border in the north of Nicaragua from Jalapa and you get into Jamastran, and there's particular farms there that the leaf does have this very amazing cocoa like aroma to it. So it's great that you're picking that up.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
because I tell you why. Um, I grew up in Africa, Nigeria as a kid.
nice.
Mm, so I grew up around a lot of cocoa.
Really interesting.
As you know, that's a lot of the cocoa that you see for, for chocolate in Europe. A lot of it come out of Ghana,
Like
Nigeria.
cacao? Is it like
Yes,
cacao?
cacao.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
cacao.
cacao.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that smell, I can't help it when I feel it through a cigar.
Yeah.
And it just dry. It's just bizarre, right? Psychologically,
You're going to
it's
get
yeah.
that also in a lot of my blends because I
Mm,
love that. For me personally, in my flavor
yes,
profiles, to get that combination, within the tobacco
mm,
flavors of cedar, cacao,
yes, yes,
dark espresso. These are
yes,
the flavors I love because I enjoy also coffee. Coffee and cigars for me, they
oh,
go they go
they they
hand in
they
hand.
they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I
So
I like that. Now,
yeah.
let's get to it. So what were you doing before you got into the cigar industry?
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
I
for
got
legal.
into the cigar industry in 1996
Wow.
officially, running a cigar store in Connecticut called the Calabash Shop. I was I graduated high school. My parents had gotten me a Diamond Crown humidor for my high school graduation. I was a good student. I wasn't a drinker. I wasn't into drugs. And I had this passion for cigars, really, which stemmed from my grandfathers and great grandfathers. All of my family smoked Connecticut cigars. So Connecticut used to manufacture a lot of cigars. And you have the growing region. So it was one of the coolest things being from Connecticut. Connecticut is, when you're growing up, you don't really like always the place that you grow up in. You want to get out of there. Connecticut is an interesting state, but there's not many cool things that you can say, oh yeah, Connecticut and cigars, the history of cigars, that was always one of the coolest things. And just learning, having a cigar with my grandfather for the first time was like a coming of age for me. To sit down. He fought in World War II. He was a Marine. That was a real coming of age. And I was 18, man. I just tried to learn everything I could about cigars, and and I graduated high school and I used to go into the cigar shop. 96 was the height of what we call the cigar boom in the United States. It was this period of, so my brother and I used to go into this cigar shop on Fridays to get cigars for the weekend, and there was just lines always out the humidor. I needed a job that summer. Was graduated, was going to start university, so I got up to the register one day and I said, I know every cigar in that humidor. I know all the blends. I know the prices. I would love to work for you guys. And 2 months go by and I didn't get the phone call, and it was a week before I was starting university for international business, and I got the call and they put me in charge of running the humidor at 18.
Wow. Wow.
And that was the beginning, man. That
I,
was the,
it's interesting you talk about international business, because one of the first things that struck me about when I looked at your catalogs of cigars and the branding and the style and you have to be someone that understands international business, and not only international business but history. And we're going to get to that, uh, because I know you recently went to Jamaica, and you recently went to the birthplace of Hassan. I mean, we're going to touch on that. I mean, so you it really growing up in London, in England, and a place I was born before, I was taken to Africa as a kid, and to get that international worldly affair as a child, uh, I had to lie all these people. These are things we studied. This is part of history. It was part of life, and the Lion of Judah, the whole, and then growing up in England with a lot of Jamaicans, and a lot of, I grew up in the era of Bob Marley, so he would come to England, Brixton, come play football. It was just normal. It was for us, and so a lot of us, in England, born in the 60s, 70s, 80s, that was that thing. In Brixton, we had Frontline, we had the Dreads. You know what I mean? If I've ever heard of the term vegetarian, it was back then, not the vegetarian we hear now. Of course, I'm a man that eats. I believe in everything in moderation, but
sure.
a
The
lot of my
Rastas were
food.
the Rastas were the first vegetarians. The
they,
Rastas
they were,
set a lot of trends before
they
they
sell a
were.
lot of trends, and we're gonna
Yeah,
get to
yeah,
that. We're gonna get to
yeah,
that. So, with all that, at 18, you're about to go into university. There you are working
yeah,
with the cigar industry. You somehow went on to work for Drew Estate,
yeah, yeah. So
and
it
because
happened
you
from
were
that.
the room, and that's how I knew of you. You were
Yeah,
very heavy and very like a
I ran the
dedicated.
factory for 12
Yes,
years. Yeah,
12 years, a
12 years.
dedicated
Yeah,
hard worker. One of the things people would say was, "Oh, Nick, they would do this, hard worker,
I tried.
hard
I
worker."
tried.
What was that like, and how did you end up going to Nicaragua and that whole thing?
So to start, that time period was
Mm,
really where start things started happening for me that led into the discovery of learning about culture. The first thing that happened was my father took myself and the family to Italy. We're all Italians, and at 14, he took us to Italy, and that changed my perspective. That was the beginning of just changing my perspective on life, because before that, I thought the United States was everything. I did. You grow up. I saw the map, the weather map. Literally thought the United States as a really young kid was everything. So that opened up the door to travel, and I always knew at that age I wanted to travel. That's all I knew. That's why I started with international business. But when I started working the cigar shop and started school, people don't realize Connecticut actually has the third largest of Jamaican population outside of Jamaica in the United States. Connecticut. And why? This is kind of very interesting. That is due to the cigar industry. In 1944, the war was waging, and there was a huge demand for cigars during World War II. I actually have letters from my grandfather requesting cigars to be sent by the family to Europe. So There was no one working the fields in Connecticut. So the state of Connecticut went to the government of Jamaica and they formed an official work program in 1944 because Jamaica was actually, people don't realize, before cannabis, tobacco, and the taínos and tobacco was, this was part of Jamaica and the production of handmade cigars in Jamaica. In 96, I was smoking Macanudos that were made in the Cifuentes factory, Hyde Park in Kingston, Jamaica. They were being rolled with Connecticut shade wrapper right from the Connecticut River Valley. You had Royal Jamaica, you had Temple Hall, you had all of these cigars being made in Jamaica. This is 96. Simultaneously, I had two friends that had really gotten into ska music. Ska, rocksteady, and they started learning about Rastafari. And I knew nothing. All I knew about Ethiopia was starvation, and this is what we grew up on. And then we have this famous mixtape called Mix Number One. So I started listening to that. I'm smoking Jamaican cigars. And then these doors just started opening. I start meeting random people, and then I start listening to Bob Marley. I mean, that was 96, and I listened to a song called One Drop, which goes, "Give us the teachings of His Majesty. We don't want no devil philosophy." And I said, what is he talking about? Why is he talking about Ethiopia? I only know we are the world. And then I start reading the Bible in my freshman year literature class. We were reading the Bible as literature in a college, not religiously. And the Bible speaks about the Garden of Eden in Ethiopia. Simultaneously, I get a National Geographic, which talking about all of first bones of humanity were found in Ethiopia. So that's the, okay, foundation. So then I'm saying you have religious texts, you have scientific. So that I started then not seeing the world as divided anymore. I started seeing it as very intricately interconnected. And that began the journey for me, and it's never stopped. And then I'm working the shop, 96, 97, 97, 98. This salesman starts coming into the cigar shop. I was in charge of the humidor and buying all the new brands. And there was some weird company called Drew Estate that kept coming into the, trying to sell us cigars. And they were selling this brand at the time called Samaro, which nobody knows about. It was god awful. And I didn't bring it into the humidor, but the sales rep kept coming back. And they ended up coming a year later out with a cigar called La Vieja Habana, which was being made by Nick Perdomo. I brought that into the store. And then this has to be 97, 98. We did an event one Saturday, and I met Jonathan Drew for the first time. So that was the first. John and I hit it off. We I had just got an email at the time. We exchanged emails. So from 97, 98 to about 2002, we kept in touch. I graduated school and just started traveling. 2000, I graduated. So I went and worked in Rome.
Yes.
Allora, va bene.
Va bene, parla italiano un
poco. When I moved to Nicaragua, I only spoke Italian. I didn't even know Spanish, and I survived off of speaking Italian.
Correct.
This was 20 years ago, next month, but I haven't spoken Italian in 20 years. So now it's my Spanish is dominates. But so
you started working in Rome. You were working in Rome.
So I was working in Rome in 2000. That year was the Jubilee. And I ended up moving to Rome, and I started doing some volunteer work, and then I started working for an organization that was helping for World Youth Day that year. The year 2000, there was millions of pilgrimage because it was the Jubilee year coming from all over the world. And I'm there, in the heart of Rome with my Haile Selassie T-shirt. By then, I was full in, So I'm in the heart of what the belly of the beast, and I'm my whole mission at that time was to spread the word of Rastafari. And by that time, I had really just deep dove into Haile Selassie's teachings, and so I was in Rome spreading the word. I followed Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers was their last tour in Europe that summer, so I I had met them a year before, and I would show up at these concerts, and then they just started letting me backstage. They would let me watch the show from stage, and I followed them through Amsterdam, Germany. So, I worked there for a while. Then I returned home to start my master's degree, and then I was having a difficult time being just being after traveling, being on my own, backpacking. The travel bug had hit me. So I went for a semester, and then I was offered a job called Italian. It was called Italian Passage. It was a high school program for high school kids by a friend of mine from Dartmouth. Started this tour from Siena to Florence to Rome, and she needed help, a chaperone and an assistant Italian teacher. So I couldn't refuse that job. So I did that job for the summertime from May to about September, and then I bought an around the world ticket. I said, I'm not going back to the classroom. I bought an around the world ticket from Paris to India to Bangkok. Then I went overland down the Mekong River into Laos, Vietnam, China, Japan. So through this whole thing, Jonathan Drew is on my email list, and we're talking. And 2002, 2003, Nicaragua wasn't a desirable place to go live, but I think the bell went off in John's head, and he said, "I think he might be open to working in Nicaragua." And I was in Japan, coming around after traveling around the world for a year, and I get an email from John. Call me. I obviously have some serious shit to talk to you about. And I called John up, and he said, "Would you like to come to Nicaragua and be my right hand man and work for the company?" Now you got to remember, Drew Estate was a fraction of its current size. Um, so after being around the world, I flew down to Nicaragua in March of '03, and I never really left. So John was working out of the back of Nick Perdomo's old house. The back was kicked out with some rolling tables. And John said, I need help overseeing, are you interested? He was there for a week. And then I accepted the job. And after a week, John said, "All right, I got to go." And I said, "What do you mean? Where?" I said, "Where are you going?" I was under the understanding I was going to be following him around. He said, "Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out." And I didn't see John much after that. And I just nestled in. And, it's difficult especially if you're accustomed to living in the city. You're in the north of Nicaragua. It's a lot of farms. The lights go out when the sun goes down. The lights go on when the sun comes up. Everybody wakes up. So I nestled in, and I was living my dream. Still am, because here I am. I'm now able and around cigar masters that I've only read about. And now I'm amongst all of them. And I have an international business degree. So it was my time to prove myself and really nestle in and learn how, handmade cigars were made, how tobacco is fermented. And that was the beginning. I hope I'm not ranting too long.
No, no, no. That's the whole idea. This is an education
Yeah.
because one of the things that I, my wife and I, when we started the show together, uh, we were on our way back from the Champagne region in France. We get invited every year by the Dutz family. Through that, they walk us to the region. So it's like an educational 5 course meal. Um, it was an introduction that was made through our cigar and whiskey club here in London, where I met my wife. So, um, so I've been smoking since '93 cigars. I collect them. I started out in South Africa where I was working on a TV series, did the winery out there, and a lot of things that entail was from my um, days in Miami Beach as a waiter. Having to study the wine list and stuff like that, because in order to do that kind of work, you need to understand wine, you need to understand champagne, and also cigars, especially if it's Miami Beach. So you could imagine being in that kind of environment. Um, to make money, as you know, in the States, in the restaurant business as a waiter, you make most of your money at the end of day sales. You got to be one of the greatest salesmen on a planet, or woman on a planet, because at the end of the night, anything from 10 to 15% of your sales goes in your pocket. Now, how do you do that? You got to understand your wine, your champagne. You got to know what region they come from. It's almost like the cigar world, right? You need to understand the palate, what goes with what mill. So I kind of memorized all of this stuff. And as years went on, it was very easy when I'm with friends to say, no, that wine works, that doesn't work, this will work, that works with this, that works with that. But the cigar thing, I think, was something I cherished because it was something that led to great conversations. Um, every one of us had parents or someone that smoked pipes as a kid. Me coming from Africa, Cameroon rapper, the whole thing, understanding that concept, tobacco, snuff, all that stuff. You understand it. It's in the system because it's done with people like us with respect. It's not done. It's and you could tell this from your grandfather and your father and your family. It brings everyone together. The conversations that come out of light in a cigar, it's golden. You really you really understand the term we were created in the image of God. You understand how to select. You understand that whole trilogy. You understand this. You understand. We can go deep with this, which is what we wanted. Which is what we want to. So you're not ranting, because this is what the show is about. Because my wife said, "Man, this the cigar community is like a belief system. If there was a religion, this would be it. This is, and it is for me. It is. It's my sanctuary. It's how I study. It's how if I need to figure things out, make decisions. I light up a cigar. If I'm doing it, most of my interviews, as we doing this run for my new project, I would sit back with a cigar. And thank goodness most of them are on Zoom. So I sit back and as they talk, and something about cigars, it keeps you on track with conversations. You're so in tune because you're smoking, you're hanging on to every word the other person is uttering, and you're enjoying it and you're growing. So for me, this is growth. So
True.
back to you, go
That's what
ahead.
attracted me to
Hmm.
starting working a cigar shop at
Yeah,
18.
yeah,
You get all these guys that come in. They're older than you. Who was this kid at 18? And then slowly you build respect based on knowing and the knowledge and your passion, but the conversations, the meetings of different people that would walk through that door, everything was left at that door. All the BS and money, no money, whatever, it's all you become one within the humidor. And if you're not, then
you're not that you don't
it gets
belong
you out
there.
of there.
You
Yeah,
get
yeah,
you out of there. I
yeah.
I always so. And one of the things that attracted me to you, honestly, was Jonathan Drew. So during the pandemic, one of the things that got a lot of people going was we would get together, and I saw another side of the cigar industry, how it helped a lot of people with mental health. So every once a week, the guys from cigar and whiskey clubs around the world, people that we knew, would come together. A friend of mine organized this whole thing where we'll get a cigar, and we start off with what you drinking, what you smoking. On you hear a guy saying, "Oh, I'm in Qatar, I'm in Abu Dhabi, I don't have any cigars left," and we're like, "Okay, you know what?" Then we stop. We'll sit there while we're having our regular conversation. Someone's taking a note, going, "What part of Qatar or what part of Abu Dhabi? Where are you?" Okay, cool. I'll try to see if I can get someone, from this country to get it to you. I know an air hostess that's flying, blah blah blah, and that's how it just evolved. And then this one evening, um, a wonderful man by the name of Ricardo, from Torah Import, um, uh, lovely guy. I mean, we're like brothers now. I mean, we like family, la famille. He said, "Hey, Oris, you want to come into one of these lines? Jonathan Drew and this." I'm like, "What?" Okay, so I went into this forum. My goodness, that passion. And coming to find out, Jonathan Drew grew up in an era I grew up in, which is hip hop. Of course, reggae first, then hip hop. Um, and so we kind of know the same people, and from there it just filtered down to his story, and his story is out of this world. And then I found out about you. I was like, okay, let me go back. Let me take this back. Let me go to the guy, the foundation, because this his story was like, he was very honest. He made it very clear. He said how he was. He there was nothing. If people don't understand the cigar industry, they can look at it like it's a bunch of cigar smoking, filthy, rich, arrogant people. If you don't know from the outside, but no, yeah, perception. But for people like us, me, um, knowing what I know, and you know, I'm very fortunate to have been to Cuba, Dominican Republic, and when you see underground what's really going on and how hard the people work to roll this stuff, as the ambassador to in London for Nicaragua, she said to me, "Oris, this thing you're smoking goes through 300 hands. Wow, it changes everything because she's on it. So you realize, wow, these people are trying to put their kids through school. So it's a business, but at the same time, it's la famille. It's rolled with a different energy. There's a lot of things that go into this thing for you and I to be, whew, on that meditative state.
Yeah,
If that does that make sense? It's not made
yeah,
by
of
machine. It's
course.
not made by robots. It's not. You get? It's
It's
not cigarette.
refreshing to hear you say
Mm,
this because we are selling the leisure part. People, when
yes.
people are smoking cigars, they're relaxing, they're enjoying. So there is this perception sometimes. There's a lack of understanding of really what goes into it, and that initially when I started would be a bit frustrating. Not 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 because people think that I'm chilling half the time, or and then if you get success, people think that you're chilling even more for some reason, and they don't understand you're working harder than you've ever worked before to maintain this level, and to maintain this level, it takes your all. You can't half step it. You can't halfway do it. And that was one of the things early on, when I started working the cigar shop at the height of this cigar boom. I worked for two amazing women, and they had just gotten back from the trade show that year. And there was so many. We called them Don Nobodies. There was so many brands, and I would smoke these cigars, and half of them I wouldn't even get through the first third. And I was saying to myself at the time, you just need to have passion for this, and someone would be successful. You would just have to put your all. And not too long after that is when I started learning about the beginnings of Drew Estate. And that was something that attracted me to the company at just the very beginning, was the level of passion that John had for the industry. and just the whole process. And I think passion, like in everything, it's a driving force.
Yeah.
You
So
know
so
it. Yeah.
so tell me, so your first year at Drew Estate, what was that like? I mean, you had 12 years.
Whew.
Could you give me the life of the first 2, 3 years? What was that like for you as a
The
as
it was there was a lot going on, and it was exciting, and it was I did I wouldn't say it was intimidating in the sense that I had been traveling so much, so living in another country. I had just gotten married. I don't really talk about it too much, but
I
I feel like I've known you for a long time. But I had eloped on the beach in India. My wife was pregnant at the time, and I had just starting a new job. I was 24, just turning 25. Um, so there was a lot. It was a new place. I was now doing something that I had felt so passionate about, and I didn't even think of it as like a career path per se. I never at one point sat down. I knew that I wanted to move to Honduras or Nicaragua to learn how to roll cigars. That was my next step. And then this opportunity had just presented itself, and luckily the people I started working with, they were all my age at the factory. I mean, it was tiny. It was a small, tight knit group, but the GM at the time, who was still the GM of the factory, he's one of my dear friends, Manuel Rubio. We were the same age. They welcomed me in with open arms, and I started working with the team there and bringing the perspective of the cigar store. Everybody was really excited because I was bringing that other side of things, um, the final product side. And these guys, now I'm here at the factory learning. Okay, how do these cigars end up in that box? So I spent the first 3 4 months was just learning everything that they were doing at the time. So just observing, learning. I would take notes every day. I was sending them to Jonathan every day. I would send him, the daily notes. Um, Real focus on quality control because I knew what the cigars needed to be. So I started to really reverse engineer the process. They had serious problems the year before with major quality control problems. So I didn't learn that until the first month in. There was a number of cigars that were completely made improperly. The gentleman that had been running the production floor the year before had been putting too much materials into the cigars. So one of the quality control steps is weight, and they were packing too many leaves, and it was a disaster. And I didn't realize that until my first month on the production floor, and then I realized, okay, quality control, of course, is got to be one of my number one focuses. Um, so after 3 4 months, I started sitting down with the team and started to, or there wasn't much organization at the time because, you're getting the business going. It's anybody that knows entrepreneurship and getting, things, you're trying to get things up on its feet. So there was a lot of, it's rough. There
yeah,
was a
you make
lot
it.
of,
It almost
yeah,
feel like you make it almost feels like you're trying and making things up at the same time, but you're losing money at the same time, and
right.
you're trying to chase. You're constantly trying to chase the
You're trying
best,
to
the
chase.
great, and
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 you're
and
trying
so
to
that
get this momentum to get I compare it to like you're rolling down the hill, you're trying to get enough momentum to get things up on its feet.
yes,
So you're like trying to make it happen. And in the process, things don't function like a
mm.
corporation or normally how things operate, you'd say, in a
So
more established. Yeah.
so that whole your whole world in the cigar store working in Connecticut, that whole world really came to play without you even seeing it coming. Because you've seen so many cigars, you smoke so many cigars, you're taking so many notes. How did that help? So that must have really kicked in because you probably came in and didn't want to step on anyone's toes. You were trying to figure things out. Then all of a
Correct.
sudden, you probably the reality hit you like, you know what? Something is not right. right? You must
Yeah.
have. So
Yeah. I
those
started
training.
noticing a lot of things that were okay. After I understood how they were operating, I
Yeah.
was then able to sit down with the GM
Mm,
and then with the right hand to production and start to make suggestions. And, John didn't want me to come in there and be, this, of course, because I didn't have that experience. I don't know if I would have hired myself at the time, if I was Jonathan, but you got to understand they didn't have the money to pay somebody, at that level. They would have had to poach somebody from another cigar company. It's a very small industry, so you would have had to stolen somebody. They didn't have the funds. So John knew I knew the product from the final, from the retail perspective. And he knew if I didn't work out, okay, it wouldn't work. He didn't realize that I'm a total beast when it comes to organization and operations. And I slowly started to organize the production, the floor, the packaging, the planning for production. At the same time, I'm now learning how to bunch, roll. I'm starting to learn, okay, where are these profiles that I really enjoy in my favorite cigars? Where are they coming from? Seed varieties, different farms. One of the really fascinating things that hit me within my first year. A lot of at my time in the late '90s, Dominican cigars dominated. Nicaragua was still coming out of the '80s, political troubles. So I started seeing uh, tobacco on its way to the Dominican Republic, large shipments of different filler tobaccos. And then I started to realize that Dominican cigars had been using Nicaraguan tobaccos for a long time. And that's where they were getting a lot of the body and strength because Nicaragua, I mean, it's just a very special, unique land. And we can get into that a little bit more of why Nicaragua is so special, but the land of lakes and volcanoes, the
hmm
soil,
Those
um,
volcanic souls, man. Yes.
it's incredible. So that started to hit me, and then I'm just learning. I'm still learning. I
Yeah.
never. You can't stop this process, but I'm learning,
So you, so you,
and yeah,
so you're watching all of this stuff being shipped out to Dominican Republic.
yeah,
They're using their greatness
Nicaraguan, yeah,
and they rolling that shit because during the embargo, as you know, Dominican Republic really stepped up. So most of the people, the rollers left Cuba. They've gone to Nicaragua, gone to Dominican Republic, and they just working. They working it. But at the same time, they know, let's go to that volcanic place up in Nicaragua, Costa Rica. Let's go grab. Yeah, Costa Rica is also another volcanic soil, as you know. Anything that grows on that kind of soil, grapes, wine, forget about it. It's on a whole nother level, right? Um, so hang on a minute. We do have something here. We just need to stay on top of it and fix it. And there you are in a place where all the top rollers, they're not leaving their factories because they're taking well very they're taking care of, like Camacho. All these people are out
yeah.
there.
I my first year,
Mm,
we were making at the time. People don't realize this. Drew Estate was making a lot of infused cigars. I didn't smoke infused cigars. I respected them from the standpoint of the retailer because we sold them, and there's a huge market for those cigars. But we're talking about premium handmade infused cigars, which of course is very different than the machine made stuff that's crap that's out there. But um, so there was a lot going into our production compared to other cigar factories. And I remember I had raised the price for rollers because we were growing and we couldn't get new people. So I raised the price. That didn't go over well. Other factories had called and started. I get a call, from John. what the hell's going on? I said, we need people. This is what we do here is a lot more complicated than every other factory in the town. So in order to, you're not going to get a person there when they can go to X factory and make X amount of dollars, and here they have to do twice the work. So I said, okay, we can solve this another way. And that's when early on I started the Drew charity program within the factory. More of a employee benefit program. So, okay, how can we get better insurance for employees? How can we get education programs going? Eventually, before I left, we built a $60,000 health clinic on site. So those things started to elevate the quality of living. Compared to when I first started in Nicaragua till now, I mean, it's amazing to see where Esteli and the factory jobs have come. It's, hands down the better jobs as far as kind of all these benefits with health insurance and, even, funeral insurance. If someone passes away, it's expensive when a family member dies. So things like that
And
helped out.
this is what's drawn me into the New World Cigars, because the benefits, the foundations that has been set to protect, to help the people, that is one of the most, the empathy in that world, the world you described, and how that's really made a lot of people look forward to coming to the factories to work and give their all, because at the end of the day they seen the benefit. And that, I can say, all of those things, it's what led to you guys going on 12 years of your time. You guys were just raking in the dough.
Let me tell
Business.
you, it
Yes.
was, I've
Because
never been, I would get the calls from the States. Nick, we need more production.
there
Nick,
you go.
Rubio, I've talked to Rubio. We got to bust down a wall here. Before
Wow.
we, that from 2003 to 2007, we were operating in more than 10 different buildings throughout Esteli. And we had gotten to a point of growth where we were in so many buildings, and we had the operations down to a science, but it came to a point where I talked to John and I said to the team in the States, guys, I can't guarantee it, we can't spread ourselves any more thin right now with all these different buildings. We need one factory. And that's when John started looking for land and ended up making the plans for building the Drew Estate factory. And then once we moved, after operating through 10 different buildings throughout out town, and then getting to one building, then that just set us off even more because the efficiencies in operations, and now I don't have to drive to another building to go to packaging. I just walk, right across the way. And so then that was another step to just the tremendous amount of growth. And, a lot of the bigger companies were sleeping at the wheel. You know, we were now catering more towards, the U.S. cigar smoker. Traditionally, the packaging was very traditional, very Latin focused packaging and bands, whereas Drew Estate came in and kind of disrupted the market in having, the artwork and infused brands and all this stuff. But I'm not smoking these infused cigars. I'm now managing. I'm blending infused cigars. Some of the first cigars I blended were actually infused brands for the market. But behind the scenes, I am blending and working on blends from about '03 to '06. I was experimenting, not nonstop. Figuring out blends, working with different tobaccos. And it was about the end of 2005. There was a family, not the cigar family, but the Oliva tobacco family, which is out of Tampa. This is not the same cigar company. This is the tobacco family. They started curing and fermenting Connecticut broadleaf in Esteli. So I now go and I'm looking at fermentation piles of leaf. I haven't been back to Connecticut now for years, and I'm looking at leaf from Connecticut in the north of Nicaragua. This is the leaf, like you said, with cacao. Growing up, that aroma, Connecticut broadleaf. I grew up with that aroma. That aroma has stuck with me, and so 2005, I took all these blends that I had been working on for almost 3 years and made 10 blends with this Connecticut broadleaf. And that became what everybody knows as Liga Privada #9. That was the cigar. I made 10 blends after 3 years of blending, and I sent those blends to the States. And that was the time where we just had taken on a new president, Steve Saka, who I'm sure you've heard of, came on at that time. And Steve was then in charge of moving us out of just being known for infused cigars into the traditional cigar market. And at that point, I was just in charge of blending. My main responsibilities were blending, tobacco purchasing, production planning, everything having to do with the operations for production, quality control. Those were my main focuses at Drew Estate.
So you came in merging the old world tradition and with modern day styles and customs. I can say
Sure.
that. So now, how did that transition into Foundation Cigars? What was that like that you had to leave? Because there's three things here I'm hearing. Your sole goal, it was quality, consistency, balancing, and flavoring. That is genius. You spent pretty much 12 years working hard on those qualities, helping to raise a brand with Jonathan. Then something happened. You decided to take the reins and start on your own. Wasn't that scary for you?
Scary.
Yes.
Scary. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life. That decision took me years.
Wow.
And it was the hardest decision, one of the hardest. It would be top 3 hardest decisions of my life was to leave Drew Estate. Everybody at that time, we had built up. We were probably making 5,000 cigars a day. So here we are, 2014, we're making 105,000 cigars a day. So to go from that, you understand it more than ever. It's hard to explain just what that's nights, that's weekends, that's your life for 12 years. And the team in Nicaragua became my family. I'm a foreigner in Nicaragua. This team became my family. So to leave my family and to leave the company that had really supported me, and we had been through so much. One of the main driving factors was a lot of this FDA business that was happening in the United States. So there was this talk of FDA regulations and the possibilities of there being a date, whereas past this date, you wouldn't be able to start a cigar company or new brands. So the thought of that was, man, if I don't do this now, it never happened. It could never happen. So I toiled with it, and the talk of FDA, as things were leading into 2014, were getting stronger and stronger, and I made the difficult decision, and it was scary, man, to spread my wings and start my own company. So I left Drew Estate May 9th, 2014. And then I launched Foundation at our trade show in July of 2015. So,
Wow.
yeah. So it was, yeah.
Wow.
So
Now,
yeah. Tough.
Wow. And the most beautiful thing is, you had great relationships with a lot of growers. Um,
That's
uh,
the foundation, right?
yeah.
This is why foundation. I had come to the point where I'd worked cigar shop. This amazing experience of helping grow one of the largest cigar factories in Nicaragua, and I felt I had now the foundation of experience, but also, when it comes to cigars, it's the leaf, right? It's the quality in the market of what we call black tobaccos, dark air cured cigar tobacco. It all comes down to, the fermentation, the quality, the curing. There's different levels of quality. So the leaf is the foundation of a good handmade cigar and making a great handmade cigar. And those relationships, I've had and have these great relationships with so many great tobacco people
So
throughout the world.
yeah. What was your first cigar that took you into the trade show? What was everyone's reaction? What was the first cigar?
So I launched with a cigar called Güegüense. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm just going to grab the box because I want to show you the artwork on this. So I knew my first project, I wanted to really express my love for Nicaragua. I wanted to do this via a blend. Of course, that's where it starts, through an all Nicaraguan blend, filler, binder, and wrapper. But I also wanted to pay homage to Nicaragua and Nicaraguan culture. So Güegüense is this imagery here, and I'll send you these images. These are masks. This is Güegüense is actually the oldest indigenous satire of the Western Hemisphere. It's recognized by UNESCO as a literary masterpiece of the world. I never knew about that, of course, and most of the world, unless you're studying Central American or Nicaraguan history, you really wouldn't come across it. It is the heart and soul of Nicaraguan culture. So any Nicaraguan, doesn't matter your religion, your political affiliation, they recognize Güegüense as distinctly Nicaraguan. So this is a dance that's been happening for 500 years in the south of Nicaragua. So I went to my art director, who I hired, who's a really good friend of mine, an artist here in Esteli. And he started off as a graffiti artist in the early 90s and self-taught himself Photoshop and all these good things. So I brought him the project and we started to begin to work on the packaging, and simultaneously I was working on the blend. Güegüense is a difficult one to pronounce. It is not a Spanish word. Yeah, it's what. Yeah, the GU is pronounced actually as like a W. Güegüense. Yeah, you say it good. That's it. And it's not a Spanish word. It's a Nahuatl word, which is the indigenous language of Nicaragua. And I knew it was going to be a difficult one for the gringos to pronounce, but I wanted to be true to the Nicaraguan culture, and I knew the Nicaraguan people would be having a microscope on the brand. So I also knew that people really didn't know who I was
Yeah.
on the market. I mean,
Yes.
I
Because
I was yeah.
you've been behind the scenes.
I didn't do events. I wasn't on the sales and distribution side. So I was targeting the hardcore group of bloggers, the cigar shops that realized what I was doing behind the scenes. And I knew they would appreciate the Güegüense. I knew they would get it. So yeah, so we launched at. I launched with the one brand Güegüense in July of 2015, and the response was incredible. I mean, the trade show, our booth was packed. The kind of word spread amongst retailers, and the reception was amazing. And we started from there. It was the cornerstone was laid, and we started building from there. And then the next year I ended up launching Tabernacle because I was waiting for the broadleaf to be finished in fermentation, and I launched Charter Oak, which is my homage to Connecticut, Charter Oak. And then I launched the Upsetters brand, which was my infused brand. Um, and I had gone to Bob Marley's 70th birthday in Kingston, Jamaica, that year before, and ended up sourcing some leaf from Jamaica and made the Upsetters brand. I really wanted to develop this portfolio from the perspective of having worked at a cigar shop. Say you only have Foundation in your humidor. As a retailer or a cigar shop owner, you have all different types of people walking through that door, and they like different things. And also, they have different price points. So if you look at my whole portfolio, there is a rhyme and reason from blends to price points, something for every type of cigar smoker.
Exactly, and I saw that
Yeah,
in Norway, in the Nordics, that your sections of cigar, and this is about the house of Foundation Cigars,
yeah.
and that's what I saw. It's like I saw a corner that was just dedicated to you.
Hmm.
Um, so what happened with Güegüense? Did you continue with that? Because I didn't see any of that.
Yeah,
Is
he's
it was it?
waiting. He's waiting on an order. We're actually
Yeah.
been trying to get him in order for some time. It's actually going to be shipping out in the next couple of weeks. So
Yes.
he's waiting for a restock. So he should be stocked up again within the next month.
How I'm just about finished this one now, and I'm about to go into wow. I'm about to go into this. I'm
Oh,
about to go into
nice,
this.
nice,
Yes.
nice, nice, nice.
Now, this is the first time I'm smoking the Tabernacle, and I did it on purpose. I wanted to embark on this journey with you for the first time in my life. So I've ve- I've been very tempted to do it, but I wanted to wait to get into your mind. Your consistency is something only someone like you with a passion can contain. And I'm getting that. And it's consistency from A to Z. And what's interesting is it's a very well traveled mindset road production. Now, how are you able to stay on top of balancing the flavors? How have you been able to? I mean, this it's because sometimes there's usually a drop in balancing and flavoring and the consistency. How have you been able to stay on top of it? Because you are in a position right now where whatever you make, just staring at the cigars. I have this. I've been very fortunate that I can look at a cigar, don't need to smoke it, to go, honey, I'm gonna age those things, and which is what I've done here. Just like I'm gonna re-age them my way, lock them up, package them well, repackage them, and lock them up. And for me personally, when I do that, I like to let things settle and rest. But the way you've done it, it's already done. I
You
can
get
just,
it.
yeah, it's already done. So it's like
Yeah.
some cigars it works for because I'm sorry, the consistency and the flavoring, you're gonna have to create that once it's in your domain. You got to understand some of these wonderful cigars when they go through travels, journeys, ports here, there. By the time they get to that part of the world, the waiting in customs, boom, boom, boom. The journey could be turbulence. It can go sideways. They could when they arrive, the wrappers could be unraveling. It can just. But with yours, I don't see one peep of that. How
Yeah.
have you been able to stay on top of that?
I mean, that again goes to the leaf, right?
Mm,
Is
mm,
working with, I'm fortunate to be able to work with the best leaf in the world, and I would say that from with 110% confidence, just because that's been my job for so many years, is the procurement of black tobaccos, dark air cured tobaccos. So there is a great level of difference between quality of leaf. So, and that's where it starts. All of my sticks are blended and shipped ready to smoke. Um, and that's because of the age of the leaf. I mean, you're saying something interesting, because it is the journey. Sometimes it does take some time to acclimate cigars because of that journey. Smoking cigars, humidity and temperature with cigars is all the way from seed to smoke. It starts, humidity and temperature from when you're planting the seeds all the way to when you're smoking the cigar is crucial all the way through. And so you do sometimes need, I would say, to acclimate depending on what climate you're living in. So if you're living in, I don't know about Europe, really as much other parts of the world, but say, Arizona in the States, Colorado, you're dealing with 15% moisture content in the air. So these things could affect the blends, especially blends that are using heavier leaf. The heavier leaf, if you're smoking cigars with heavier leaf at a much lower humidity content, moisture content, it's going to smoke hot. It's going to smoke potentially too harsh. It can totally affect the blend. So, I could see acclimating cigars, but all my sticks are ready to go. Quality control is crucial. I'm just a lunatic when it comes to making sure quality control. The worst thing as a cigar smoker, I'm a cigar smoker. The worst thing is to get a cigar that is not quite right. Um, so that one should open. That one will open up a little bit as you get those perfectos are tough because the point it generally can be a little bit tighter, and then it opens up as it gets into that first third. But I'm always on just the quality, and I know what it's like to buy cigars and not be right, and it's troubling to my soul. If people have issues with quality, and I always get all quality control issues from my whole sales team to my internal team. Everything gets run through me. So I don't, nothing goes by without it coming directly to me. And then I'm always addressing it with the team and the quality control team. And it's constant, man. You can never, it's a constant process. You have to be always on top of it.
and what's interesting, the scented is very. You have a lot of the archaeological details ingrained with it. Was
Yes.
that something you planned, or it just? I mean,
So that cigar is a really special one when it comes to
mm,
the history, because I'm actually working with Highclere Castle, who is, there you go. Highclere Castle is owned by the Earl of Carnarvon, who discovered King Tut's tomb with Howard Carter in 1922. So back in 2017, a good friend of mine from Connecticut actually is friends with Lord and Lady Carnarvon from Highclere, and he embarked on creating Highclere Castle Gin. And in conversations with Lord Carnarvon, cigars came up because cigar smoking at the castle goes back hundreds of years. And Lord Carnarvon, who discovered King Tut's tomb with Howard Carter, was a big cigar smoker. So my friend approached Lord Carnarvon, and they ended up coming to Nicaragua. Lord Carnarvon, he was the godson to the Queen of England, and I, you know, I was, this was 2016, 2017, and I wasn't really looking to make cigars for anybody else at the time, but Lord Carnarvon ended up coming to Nicaragua. We hit it off, and the history at the castle, I love history, was just mind blowing. And money doesn't impress me, fancy things doesn't impress me. The quality of one's character impresses me. So I was really impressed by Lord Carnarvon, and my buddy Adam I had known for a while, and he's just the salt of the earth. So we started making Highclere Castle cigars, which I make two versions, a Connecticut and also a Habano wrapper. And then this past November was the 100th year anniversary of King Tut's discovery. And Highclere asked if I would make a 100th year anniversary cigar, which we've been working on this cigar for more than two years. So we wanted to do something special. And, I don't want things to come across gimmicky. I don't like gimmicks. I want to do things right. So we recreated a box that was found within King Tut's tomb. So that box is an exact replica of one of the many boxes found within the tomb. Yes. So the hieroglyphs, we got a Yale Egyptologist to do the hieroglyphs to make sure that they were proper on the box. And we regenerated the box. Yeah. And I made a special 6 3/4 by 52 Perfecto blend. All the tobaccos in the blender, 3 years aged in the filler. It's a really special project. And
So so this is an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, a Brazilian Mata
yes,
fine bando.
yeah. But
Talk to me about that.
Brazil Matafina is actually one of my favorite tobaccos. It's one of the rare tobaccos to use because there is not a large quantity of it grown anymore, because it was traditionally used for a wrapper, and unfortunately the yields for wrapper crops very difficult, very similar to broadleaf. So it's not, you don't see it quite as much, but it's one of my favorite tobaccos. It's a darker, richer, heavier leaf. It's actually one of there's 5 original seed varieties from which all the different seed varieties come from. One of those is Brazilian Matafina. The other one is Habanesis from Cuba. Then you have San Andreas Negro from Mexico. You have Sumatra and Connecticut broadleaf. Those are the 5. From there, you get the Criollos, the Connecticut Shades, all these other different seed varieties that have come. But Matafina is one of the older ones.
And where does AJ Fernandez come into this?
So I work really closely with Abdel. So I basically have a factory within a factory with Abdel. So I work with him closely on the Highclere, Tabernacle. These are made within his factory. I do all the blending, but I end up working with him on the manufacturing side. And I've done this because he shares this tremendous tobacco passion and knowledge with me. So when I started my company, I was about to open up my own factory, and I said to myself, I have a lot of work to do on the sales and distribution side because it's new to me. So instead, I went to Abdel, and he basically opened his arms to me and opens his doors to me and lets me do what I need to do within his facility, and he's yeah, he's a
It because
he's a hermano de la hoja. He's a brother of
wow,
the leaf.
wow, you know, I get that very instant type of feel. You know, when they used to pray in a tomb, they used to light the incense and the smoke. That's
That's
what
what
I'm
it
getting with
means.
this.
That's what
Yeah,
it means.
am I on it?
That's what Senator
Yeah.
means, is incense. It means of the gods.
Yes.
It's different though,
Yes.
right? It's very
It,
different.
it it's not only is it different, it's very solemn.
Yeah.
It's I feel like I am in a tabernacle. I feel like I'm in a place of worship. You know, when you go into these places in Egypt, and you know that when they're praying and stuff like that, that's what I'm getting from this. Um, what's interesting is you you are really true to the whole concept of foundation, the beginning of mankind. Um, and just listening to you and the conversation and your journey, do you feel sometimes, and I feel this as an artist, you're an artist, um, Jonathan Drew, I mean, the list goes on. Can I say that you are a servant to the people? Can I say that? Because one of the things that strike me in this conversation, you and I are here, and anyone watching this right now would say, hang on a minute, that's that guy, isn't he? And this guy, wow. And the wow is we're about humanity here. You said, I really don't care who this person is. I just need to see the humanity in this individual in front of me. And this is one of the most beautiful thing with our brothers and sisters of the leaf, that community. And as I smoke this, it's I find myself traveling um, in a very I traveling in the thought of wow, if a lot of our leaders in the world could take time out, come together, and have a sentence and just for half an hour reflect on where they want the world to go today. This is the kind of this is what I'm feeling, that everyone, even if you don't smoke, just sit next to someone who's smoking it, because it's very solemn. And do you realize, and have you been told by, I hear you mention your wife, you're divorced, but that's okay. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, you started a journey with this woman. Um, I met my wife in the cigar world, and 3 kids later, here I am. Uh, and one of the things that kept me filled with compassion and empathy, I'm a Buddhist, and I've been practicing Buddhism for almost 18 years of my life. Um, and one of the things I can say, and the reason I took hold of the world of Buddhism was through cigars, because I was able to sit over the years before my transition into Buddhism. reflecting. And as a Buddhist, that's what you do, you reflect. And one of the things that people need to understand, Rastafarian Buddhism, the school of Haile Selassie, all these things are designed for us to reflect, to create, to use our talent to bless other people. And as I speak to that, I feel like I am sitting in front of a mirror image of myself. But in your case, you've used your talent wholeheartedly, honestly, no gimmicks, no infusion, to create that moment to reflect, to go deeper within yourself and realize that it starts with you. So my question to you is, can I say that is what has got you here today? Can I say
Yeah,
that?
100%. That's all I've operated on is that. And this is cigars are that medium that I've been able to use to communicate that message. And it's all there, you know. It's it's an album, and every size is its own individual track, and it's communicating that message that it is all one. It sounds cliche to people, but it
It's
is
not
that
cliche.
medium.
It is
Yeah.
not cliche. And before we started this conversation, may your daughter's soul rest in peace.
Thank you.
Did did your
Yeah.
did the passing of your daughter had a lot to do with your reflection and your journey from that moment to now?
Yes, because she was born and she had a lot of issues, but she lived only in the moment, and that's what I most learned from her. Even though she had a lot of medical complications, when she was happy, and she was purely in the moment, and that is all we have. I mean, when it comes down to it, that is that is all you have. It's all happening now. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, but men see it not, and it's always now. I mean, that's really what she taught me, and that's what cigars have taught me. Is like you said, it is the medium that is used as a meditation to experience the present moment. There's no past. There's no past, future. It's all right here.
Because fire and smoke and the earth work hand in hand. Fire can burn if it's not controlled to destroy. It's the same thing with cigars. If if the cigar is not controlled, people can get
Yeah.
hurt. Thoughts can
There's
go
a there's a great
sporadically.
quote. There's a
Mm,
great quote, and I haven't been able to find out who this gentleman. He was a prince supposedly, and his
okay.
name was Mahara, Maharg. Maharg. I'm going to read the quote to you because I think it sums up cigar smoking. While smoking a cigar, we are in the presence of eternity. The tobacco reminds us of the earth from which it and we came. As with ourselves, the life of some cigars are short, while others last a while longer. But in the end, all are consumed. But the smoke, the smoke, the smoke drifts gently heavenward on its quest to combine with the great eternal oneness.
Wow. Great internal oneness.
Oneness. It's all there. It's cigars is life. It
Wow.
encompasses everything, you know, earth,
Wow.
fire, water,
Yes.
It's all there. Breath.
Yes.
It's it's one. I actually lived in a Buddhist community at
Mm.
one point in France called Plum Village. It was run by a Vietnamese Buddhist monk called Thich Nhat Hanh.
Thich Nhat
Uh,
Hanh.
yeah,
Mm.
who
Mm.
recently
Mm.
passed away. I think just last year. But it was my wife at the time was is an active. She was an active Buddhist in maybe you've heard of. His name was Trungpa Rinpoche. He formed Shambhala.
Shambhala,
Shambhala.
correct,
Yeah,
correct,
Shambhala.
correct, correct. He
It's
has a
known
big
as
following. He has a big following.
yeah, Colorado. In Boulder, Colorado, they have one of their centers. He was known as the Crazy Wisdom Teacher,
Wow.
but he has a really famous book called The Sacred Path of the Warrior,
Wow.
which was a great book. But yeah,
Let me let me ask you something.
sure.
W- You say something here, it's to do with the Highclere Castle, and you talk about von Gutting, what he stated. He says the great domain, she who is high, she who is bright, she who is clear. And knowing what your ex-wife, and whether you like it or not, she would always be your wife in spirit. You had a daughter. I have two girls and one boy. Would I be right to say, because I hear a lot of she, would I be right to say, and would you agree with me that women are gods, and not only gods, but they are the all-seer?
The mother of creation.
Yes, yes, Aya. Would you would you agree with that? Because your journey through cigars and the way you have created them, you've created them with a very soft and tender touch, not aggressive. I watch a lot of your cigars, they're very gentle, very easy to digest, and this is what I'm getting from what
That's
I'm
interesting. Yeah,
what I'm smoking right now. Is that something you recognize?
100%. Yeah, and I
You have a
think
lot of,
that's
yeah,
coming
go
from
ahead.
the earth, right? Is just
Mm-hmm.
the process of tobacco and the nurturing of tobacco. It's that if you're not nurturing tobacco and taking care of it, there's another. I think of this quote is coming to me from an old movie in the 50s about Connecticut. I have to read this to you now. I'm sorry if I'm quoting too much. I'll use my own words. Tobacco is like a baby. Hold on, let me find this quote. I'm sorry. Uh, Here it is. This comes from a movie called Perish from 1960, and it's about a woman who travels to the Connecticut River Valley to take care of the children of a tobacco baron's. He's a big tobacco grower, and this woman in the field is explaining tobacco to her, and she says, "Tobacco is like a baby. Got to keep it warm, keep it sheltered, water, hoe, sucker, all the time, care for it, all the time, work for it, worry about it, too hot, too wet, too dry, and in the end, it give you nothing but trouble." and those who know working with tobacco and there's the challenges, but you have to care for it. You have to listen to it. You have to, and those are, motherly female, instincts of having that influence. And that's what it takes in the fields. That's what it takes in, the curing process and the, so I've never thought about it that way until
Mm, mm.
you brought it up.
Did
But
did 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 did
yeah,
your did your do you have a lot of female rollers?
oh yeah, all the females in this industry keep this industry going. It typically, it's not set that way, but female rollers, because of their attention to detail, applying the wrapper, they generally have smaller hands, so it's more delicate. And in the packaging and sorting and selecting, it's very common, although it's not a rule, but it's
Yes.
very common. Yeah.
About a month ago, a guy by the name of Todd Bell said this. Todd Bell, if you're out there, thank you for this. He says the Highclere Castle Centeger is one of the best smokes I have ever enjoyed. Smooth, consistent, flavorful. It's a must if you enjoy a good cigar. That is how I feel. Um,
Nice. Where's Todd from? He
Todd,
was a reviewer.
yeah, he's a bought it a month ago. He was just sharing his opinion about it.
Wow,
Um, and
very cool.
I that is exactly how I felt, and that's why for to hear that, reading that can only come from the source. What was going on in the source underground in the factory for this to be in my hands and your hands, and that's why I asked. And the only way you can get all of that consistency has to be the fact that there are women involved in rolling this because you know you, you've been around and I'm sure your mom has a lot to do with the way you see life and where you are. Or a or that certain woman in your life had a lot of influence over the way you think and the way because to really be grounded and to have the kind of etiquette that you have in this industry, and I'm talking about you now, Nick, I understand why. The fact that you've gone as far deep into the tombs of non and all of this great great kings of our times and Haile Selassie to understand that to be in that place to go that place and to come out of it and take it into this. There is no way you and I could be sitting here, and I really believe it. As busy as you are, it was a spirit that drove you to say, you know what, I need to do this, and which takes me to this. I was watching Hand Rolled, and I actually interviewed the two gentlemen, and Jess and Steve, man. And we sat for endless hours, man. And my wife even got on, and the kids in the background, my kids in the background, we were laughing. And I said, I loved your honesty and sincerity in that film. What you said, how you said they got it all wrong. They can't mix premium. I could see where you were coming from. You were like, hang on a
Everybody
minute.
knows kids
Y-
don't smoke premium handmade
Yeah.
cigars. They
No,
smoke 99-cent blunts, baby.
And we know that, those
Yeah.
cigars used to roll joints before it was legal. It's just, you just shake your head. I never forget this, Philly blunts, all that stuff in New York, over the years, watching people take a cheap one of these things and break it to pieces, but you will never see them do that with a premium cigar. And I say, kids don't go out and buy a $30 stick. That's impossible. They're not going to be smoking that every day at 18, 17, 18. And you made that very clear. Now, where do you see the world of premium cigars? What's the future for premium
Ooh.
New World cigars? Where are we going? Where are we going,
I,
Nick?
I think we're on the path of even more education and
Yes.
this being exposed to more people, but the right people. Not everybody's going to get this, but I think with guys like you, other people in that have, I think, a reach and are learning more and now have access to cigar makers. And I think this ends up, spreading to more people that had no idea. Because for the most part, people really do not have a problem with cigars. I mean, if you talk to the common person, they're generally seen as celebratory. You have a child, you're at a wedding. The issue is there's not enough education, and it's something I like to talk to stores about and the stateside. I don't know about other countries or say, but people get intimidated coming into handmade cigar shops, and I think it's starting where people are that culture is slowly changing, where things are becoming more a little bit more welcoming to people that don't smoke, and people are going to continue to learn. And I think it's definitely going to be growing. And I think people are learning a lot more about cigars coming from Nicaragua, Honduras, realizing that a lot of these Cuban masters and tobacco growers who had everything taken from them left to these other countries. And that perception of, I think, just Cuba is now expanding, which I think is a good thing, because I think it's overall, spreading to more and more people. Um, I hope at the same time it doesn't spread too fast, because then you do have these cigar booms, where it kind of disrupt the market. It's been nice to see over COVID, because I think that started to happen where people had time to, okay, what is this about? What is, you know, and especially as people get older, and that's what you see is family people that they're not out wiling out anymore, drinking. You see, it's been great to see the hip hop community, get into cigar smoking and premium handmade cigars. I'm seeing more comedians, kind of, cigars go hand in hand with comedians, which is great. So I hope, it continues to expand, and we're able to really educate these legislative bodies. And we came a long way in the States from 2009 to 2020. We in the States really dodged some big bullets there with this FDA regulation. But I think at the end of the day, people see this is an adult pastime, and kids aren't smoking these products, and there really is little to no health effects if you're enjoying 1 to 2 cigars a month. I mean, this has been seen and shown, and that it's there's a lot worse things in the world to be dealing with, and there's
And
bigger problems in the world that
yes,
we need to
there
address.
is. There is
You
bigger
know?
problems in the world to address, and
Yeah.
So, and another thing I want to throw out there to your side of town. I've seen it firsthand during the COVID, how cigars and mental health amalgamated. Um, I've seen how a, a lot of that was hailed through our community, the brothers and sisters of belief, um, prescribing different cigars for certain people. Like me personally, I smoke certain cigars as a ritual for certain moments in my life. If I, or that day or that week or that month, um, I use those moments out of the altar. So, my daily was consistent. I start with chanting. I chant for an hour, and 15 minutes of that, my chanting is that everybody in the world is happy, and for the peace and protection and tranquil of the four quarters of the world. That's one of the highlights of why many Buddhists chant, or even the Muslims or Judaism, the Rastafari. That's why we do what we do. You know, uh, do you agree that the mental health, many people during the COVID, because during the COVID I saw the rise of cigars, good cigars. The conversation is on a whole nother level regarding cigars. Now, do you think the COVID was a blessing, and the COVID had a lot to do with that? And not only that, I want to also ask you, um, how has social media helped the likes of you in this era?
So, COVID for me,
Yeah.
personally, it came at the right time. I think everything happens for a reason. That's just how I live my life. And for me personally, I'm not saying it was of course, a good thing, but I was at this point where I've been burning the candle at both ends, and I needed a stop. I needed a slow down. I needed to regroup, and it was a time of great. You talk about mental health. It it was scary because it was the first time I had stopped in a while and slowed down. And we mentioned my daughter; she passed in 2008, and I'd never dealt with it, man. I never dealt with it um, where I really felt, the pain. I kind of avoided the pain, and COVID, it was tough because I really opened that door and started feeling for the first time in a long time. And cigars definitely played into the mental health part of things. I think it was also a time where people had time, where they're not at the office. You're able to. We call it we've been calling it a mini boom in the cigar industry, and it was nice in the sense that it wasn't this crazy boom like the 90s, but we definitely saw a surge in people enjoying and learning about handmade cigars. So I think it was a good thing for the cigar industry, and we were able to dodge that bullet of the FDA and them see, that we were not the issue, and that there is a difference, and that's why I said that quote in the film is there for many people there was this blurry line that oh, it's all just cigars, so it's all the same. And it's like, no, it's not just black and white. There's a lot of detail that you're missing. in what a handmade cigar is compared to a high volume mechanized 99 cent product. And we saw the rise in those products because of the legalization of cannabis. This machine made market for cigars has grown. It's been crazy, that boom that boom. Whereas our market generally does not grow like that, to those kind of numbers. But it was nice to see some growth over the COVID period and people really taking the time to learn about handmade cigars. I'm sorry, I forgot your second part to the question.
Second part, social media.
Oh, social media. Social
Mm.
media. I have started the company off of social media. It's
Wow.
we've been very active on Instagram. Has been really the main platform. I started my Instagram many years ago. My Instagram is Nick R Agua. It's Nickr and then Agua. So when I started the company, I sort of started funneling my followers over to Foundation, and then Foundation took on a life of its own, and that's been really huge for us in just educating people about our brands, getting the message out there, people understanding, each cigar. We tried to do some fun projects over the years. We made a music video, a hip hop video. I don't know if you ever saw that. Did you ever see the Foundation hip hop video? Good friends of mine called the Reminders. They're a husband and wife hip hop team. You would love them. I mean, you got to meet Asia and Samir sometime. They are very like minded, and they're family. And they had sent me a track, and I listened to it, and I said right away, we had to film a music video for this, and it happened within a month and a half. I mean, it was just a fun project, and I always wanted them to come down to Nicaragua and visit me. They sent me the track. I said, "You're coming to Nicaragua. We're filming a music video. My friend's going to film it." And they thought I was joking. And I said, "Send me some dates." I said, "There's no way we're going down to Nicaragua." They sent me the dates. I sent the plane tickets the next day, and we filmed this video Monday. They flew in on a Monday. We shot Tuesday, Wednesday, and they were out on Thursday. And then next week was our trade show, and we had the music video for the trade show. So that was a fun. It was. I saw, hip hop has been enjoying cigars. So I said, what a cool, there's never been a hip hop video filmed on a factory floor. So I said it would be a great combination. So we've tried to do some fun things with the social media. I have an amazing art team. I'm actually in our art studio down here. We have a great graphics team. My main graphic artist, his artist name is Thief Operandi. Okay, he's incredible. And then we have a three-man group that's called Atoll. Atoll means in Central America, it is actually a indigenous corn dish, but it actually means the mixing of different styles. And they do incredible work. So we do our own photography, we do our own video work. So social media is been crucial for us, and we try to keep things interesting, and we do our own print ads. And to me, it's just when we go to the trade show, a lot of our trade show booth is made in Nicaragua. To me, it's very important because you're transmitting the message of what the company's about. And I think when it's coming from internally, as opposed to maybe companies that you hire. I'm not saying that's bad, but I think it's easier to transmit the message when it's coming from an internal team. And I'm the conductor. I'm the composer. I've always wanted to be a composer of an orchestra. So I'm kind of leading the way with the vision, and these guys just are incredibly talented and help manifest this vision. And yeah, I mean, social media is it's crucial. It's crucial.
Wow. Listen, Nicholas Melillo, the CEO of Foundation Cigars, thank you. It's been an ultimate pleasure, and this is just the beginning because the goal of this, is also to everyone that I've been working with, like yourself. And we're trying to educate. It's bigger than just cigars. Uh, Cigar, I said something when I won the cigar smoker of the year 2022 in London. I said, this thing of ours in our hands is a moment away to a great conversation, a life changer, a revelation, and something that could lead you beyond things that you could never imagine through conversation, to that person in front of you, to the people in the room. All you have to do is just pay attention to the smoke. And it doesn't matter what kind of cigar you're smoking. It's that cigar that makes you incredibly happy in that moment. Um, and I want to thank you for your humility, for your compassionate way in which you have brought the foundation, your world, to where you and I are sitting comfortably, just dialoguing. So I just want to give you my flowers. I want to thank you for taking the time out uh, to to uh, to come into my sanctuary, Oris Sanctuary, my palace, because my palace is your palace, um, and it's a place where no one's judged. It's a place where it doesn't have to be a university lecture. We all know people who could sit here and just ramble on about the tobacco and this and that, and you're sitting there, you're going, okay, okay, this is fantastic. But it's about the people, and you've made that very, very clear tonight. And I can't thank you enough. I
El
can't
gusto
thank
es
you enough.
mío. El
Oh,
gusto es mío.
thank.
The pleasure is mine.
Oh
Uh,
man, thank
thank
you,
you.
because this is just the beginning, and I'm looking forward to coming to Nicaragua any one of these days, and we're gonna go a little deeper. I want to walk with you through the terrain, through the process.
It would
I
be
want the
great.
world, yeah, I want the world
Yeah.
to see it. I want the world to see it, and especially I'm just blown away by the charitable aspect of your company. And my man, um, I feel a lot of big things for you and the company. And many years from now, your estate will just continue to run by itself. And that's that. I'm sure that's already happening because you have ingrained the quality control, the consistency, the humanity into those around you. And again, I can't thank you enough, but to say, you know what, thank you so much for your time and for inviting me also into your world, because my sanctuary is your sanctuary. It's a church, man. We're here. Um, yeah, thank you.
Sure, sure. I would
I
love to have
appreciate it.
you to Connecticut too. Some if you're ever in New York or the
Yeah,
Northeast, um,
absolutely.
to come to the office and the farms there, and I think you would really enjoy that also.
I would take that on, man. I'll be there with the
Yeah.
family, and thank you
Thank you.
so much, bro. Yes.
Thank you for all you're doing for this
Uh,
industry and spreading the word. And it means a lot, and
yeah.
it's really needed. And you're a great ambassador for handmade cigars because you're a kindred spirit and you get it. And
I,
so it's
I,
a real pleasure.
as the words of the director and producers of Hand Road, I'm gonna take this quote from them. I'm just another love child of the cigar world. I'm just another love child of the cigar world. Someone made love, gave birth to me, and left me out in the tobacco fields, and I'm just going, oh, that looks nice. Oh, I love that. Oh, what's that? Okay, let me, But thank you so much. And do me a favor, just hold up. I'm gonna stop
Sure,
this and
sure.
it should something should come up. I'm gonna stop this right here. Wait 1 second.